All right, it is 5:45. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting of May 12th, 2025. We will start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Gabe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart.
Here.
Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dahlke.
Here.
Amber Kirsty.
Here.
Emily Hines.
Here.
Michelle Dupree.
Here.
Angela Wolf.
Here. We have a quorum. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our mission statement. The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed changes to the agenda order tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to recommendations and commendations. So tonight, the board is going to recognize all of our 2024-25 retirees. I am going to read off the names while I'm sitting here. And I know not everybody is able to join us tonight, but after I read them off, if you all want to come stand up, and I'll pass out certificates. At the end of the school year, we are saying goodbye to Tina Huckel, Maria Jaskowski, Heidi Carmen, Ralph Haas, Linda Jolicoeur, Colette Labuda, Michelle Latz, Jody Preston, Kimberly Roberts, Amy Schrader, Elizabeth Schuster, Randall Smith, Kelly Steinmeier, Kim Winchester, and Kay Wolf. Please come up, whoever is able to make it tonight.
Rachel, can you say their names too?
Sorry, as I'm doing this.
Yes.
Heidi Carmen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colette Labuda. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Sorry. There's Kimberly. We're doing a photo there. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Congratulations. You were going. Everybody right here. 1, 2.
What's the collective years of?
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for all your years of dedicated service in SBMA. And congratulations. All right, next up we have our May 2025 highlight on mood.
Yes, it is available in public domain for anybody to look at, and I encourage everyone to take a look. But just a few things from each school I want to mention. First of all, the high school had their Youth Career Expo, which was terrific, and we appreciate the partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. Also, congratulations to Ray Pember, who was honored as a WIA Scholar Athlete. That's a real prestigious award in the state of Wisconsin. Then this middle school had their terrific musical, Wizard of Oz. Also, I got a chance to see the science students present to the Menomonie Rotary Club about their stream study and also their visit to the Red Cedar Watershed Conference. The middle school students and their teacher Rachel Scott do a terrific job with that. Downsville had a couple things. First of all, the 4th and 5th graders were competing in the Science Olympiad competition. And then also, I thought it was a really neat activity with Mrs. Schneider. They did an escape room challenge as they learned about going to 6th grade. They had to open combination locks and earn clues. Knapp Elementary, they had their trout release with actually Mr. Dalkey from the school board at the Knapp Pond. That was terrific. Also their spring concert. Oak Lawn Elementary School, the 1st graders had a lemonade stand, and grades 2nd and 3rd performed their concert Under the Sea. At River Heights Elementary School, they celebrated Hmong Heritage Month, and they had a great presentation and a miniature concert. Also did some really nice cultural presentations to River Heights students throughout the month. And then Wakanda had their annual walkathon. I think the weather was okay. And then also they had their concert. It was a baseball themed event. So I'm imagining Take Me Out to the Ball Game must have been a pretty good chorus. So that's the highlight on youth for the past month. Thank you to all of our students and staff and all our administrators for doing a terrific job.
Thank you. Next up, we have our student representative communications with possibly our last time and master tonight. Take it away.
Good evening, members of the school board. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present one last time this school year.
The Menomonie FFA held their FFA banquet on Friday, May 9th. Many students that participated in the FFA organization events were honored with various awards. Over 100 people from the community were in attendance for the 68th annual FFA banquet.
For the first time in almost 20 years, the boys golf team finished first in a regular season Big Rivers Conference meet. Playing in the Eau Claire Memorial BRC meet at Wild Ridge Tuesday, the Mustangs won the meet by 2 shots over second place Memorial and by 3 shots over conference leader Hudson. Leading the way for the Mustangs was Trent Wold, shooting an even par 36, good for second place. Also scoring Mitch Kopachewski, 37, third place, Tyler Arkin, 38 for 5th place, and Isaac Renish, 41 for 22nd place. Overall, a great team win.
We had some wonderful families, and 10X Manufacturing donate a total of 20 yearbooks for seniors in need. There is a lot of kindness in this community, and these seniors are very grateful. Yearbooks will be distributed Friday, May 16th.
This year, MHS will graduate 18 global scholars. These students have taken globally focused coursework, 4 years of the language, read and watched books and movies with global content, as well as had 4 cultural experiences throughout their 4 years of high school. We are proud of the work they've done and who they've become as people. All global scholars participated in a globally focused service project of 20 hours or more to help make the world a better place.
The band program is wrapping up performances for the year. Saturday, May 10th was the Jazz Ensemble's annual Spring Swing Dance, and Wednesday, May 14th is their final concert of the year. Additionally, the Jazz Ensemble performed at the Pablo Center for the Arts in Eau Claire, opening for the Chippewa Valley Jazz Orchestra on Friday, April 25th. Lastly, congrats to 4 band students who were selected into the Wisconsin School Music Association's Honors, or All-State Ensembles this year. These people are Weston Weirs-Gala on bassoon and orchestra, Harrison Davis on clarinet and band, Amelia Osterhaus on bass clarinet and band, and Cody Chen on trombone in jazz.
Alina Zhang and Olivia Rubenzer competed at the Junior Achievement Titan Challenge at State on May 1st. They got 3rd and qualified for the national competition in Atlanta in the beginning of June.
Menomonie DECA received an email this week from the Wisconsin DECA that our chapter of the month for April. It was based on our unique contributions for fundraising. Our fundraising efforts throughout the school year can be seen on our Instagram account at Menomonie_DECA if you're interested. Also, this past month, me and my partner in the school-based enterprise event, we went down to the national conference, and I had a great time, I will say. I got to go to Disney World. Yep. The 4th annual Mighty Mustang Invite was run on Friday, May 9th. It was a spectacular day with students from Menomonie High School, the middle school, and Chippewa High School, North High School, and Rice Lake High School competing. Both Menomonie levels had a successful day, taking home ribbons in many events.
The MHS Forensics team earned the Excellence in Speech Award this year at the state competition. This is the highest award a team can earn, and it means that our team was in the top 5% of all Wisconsin high schools that competed. This is the 16th year in a row that MHS Forensics has placed in at least the top 10% of all schools.
Kendra Schmidt and Annabelle Weber presented their National History Day project at the state competition in Madison last weekend. Do you know what photos? Okay. Menomonie High School SOAR cleared a large area of rocks and other natural debris from the environmental site last week. Paul was very excited to have this project completed.
A group of 4 students will be heading to the Finance Bowl State next week on Tuesday to compete for the state championship on Wednesday in Madison. The students are Brody Thornton, Ray Pember, Luke Pember, and Aiden Anderson. This is the 2nd year out of 3 years we have sent a team to the state competition.
The anatomy and physiology students got a chance to visit the UW Stout Cadaver Lab this past week. They did an incredible job.
The boys tennis team is number 1 in the conference before heading into the conference tournament next weekend. Good luck, boys tennis.
9 SDMA students, 5 MHS students, and 1 MHS teacher are involved with the revival of Shakespeare in the Park this summer through the Menomonie Theater Guild. Performances of A Midsummer Night's Dream will take place at Wilson Park July 11th through the 13th. Also, just to wrap up, I'd like to add that this is my last meeting with you guys. I will be graduating and moving on to bigger things. I will be attending the University of North Dakota, majoring in commercial aviation. So I've been working on my private pilot's license for this past year and wrapping it up, getting ready to take the test soon, so ready to hit the ground running once I get to college. Yeah.
Yes, and this is also potentially my last time speaking at a school board meeting too, so I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity to allow student council to come and share what's happening in our school with you guys. So that's all we have for today, and thank you so much.
Thanks for your time every month to come and talk to us about everything that's going on at the high school. It's the highlight of my month. I love hearing from you. And we'll miss you both. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I also just would like to say thank you so much for being such a great spotlight in our meetings, and also to you directly, Max. I'm wondering if there will ever be a reunion episode of the YouTube that you did to entertain me during COVID.
Yeah. You never know.
I think summer reunion.
And those gift bags are for you too.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next up, we have community communications. It looks like we have one speaker tonight, Josie Hillman.
Sit here because hi. My name is Josie Pillman, and I'm from NAP, which is in the school board, the SDMA school district. Dr. Zadowski and members of the board. Understanding the role of public education in teaching our children to read, write, and do arithmetic is important. The school district has been given a sacred trust by the parents and all members of the Menomonie community. The parents are saying, in essence, they trust the school district with the education of their children. A little history tells us that the Pilgrim Fathers knew that the reason their offspring should know how to read words was so that they might be able to read the Bible for themselves and know truth. So we saw early the New England primers using rhymes like this to teach the alphabet. A is for Adam. In Adam's fall we sinned all. B is for Bible. Heaven to find, the Bible mind. As the country matured, institutions of higher education sprang up. Most of them were seminaries, preparing the men to be spiritual leaders who could rightly divide the word of truth. These institutions had names like Yale, Harvard, and Princeton. How far have these institutions strayed from their founding principles today? As we hone into higher education closer to home, say Madison or even Stout, are they teaching our children to read that they might better know God? When a teaching position is open, does our local team have to follow the ideology presented by, say, UW-Madison? Which scores the most points, character or an educational institution degree? And what is the recourse for community members, mothers, grandmothers, and concerned citizens? What if those higher education institutions have so corrupted themselves that they approve all manner of immoral curriculum and library books? Then what? I would contend that the Reconsideration Committee needs to have a representation of common folk, not just those trained in the ideology of higher education, and not just those who have an understanding of the role and responsibilities of school libraries. We need these, and not just those who are well-versed in curriculum requirements. We need these too. But the Reconsideration Committee should also have a number of people outside the educational system: farmers, parents, businessmen, postal workers, lawyers, pastors, computer experts, military vets, etc. Some should be spiritual people who understand the effect of education on the hearts and minds of our children. I believe a few of these spiritual leaders could help to balance the committee and make a more rounded Reconsideration Committee, giving a perspective that the committee does not have without them. I would also give the community at large, it would also give the community at large an advocate on their behalf when there are concerns. This would make a much healthier committee, learning how to debate and compromise for the good of the community. Learning how to interact with various opinions before coming to a consensus is valuable for us all, and within a committee dealing with the education of our little children can only be a good thing. Thank you very much.
Right, next we have our revenue and expenditure reports for the month ended April 2025.
Yeah, so I'm just going to highlight a few key points from the revenue and expense reports that I submitted. First, I'll start with the revenue report, and I'd like to focus on the capital sales, which came in above our expected revenue. And this is primarily due to a one-time technology recycling sale that brought in around $22,000. So we recycled old Mac books that help pay for new MacBooks. Aside from that, our grant revenue is gradually coming in based on recommendations not only from the DPI but also WASBO. I've started processing federal grants claims on a monthly basis just to improve consistency, but also with the uncertainty in federal funding, and I'll continue this practice moving forward. In the expenses by object, one item to note is the apparel account, which just went slightly over budget. And after looking into it, I found a vast majority of expenses in this category were Fund 21 accounts, which are either supported by donations or by student fundraising. So that while the account is over budget, the expenditures are covered then by these outside sources. Finally, in the expense by function report, with the arrival of warmer weather, I took a deeper dive to look closely at our gas and electricity costs. And this year they were trending about 14% higher than this time last year. So in that account, electricity makes up the bulk of it, and electricity did go up about 5%. But the main increase with that account is natural gas usage, and it was especially centered around the high school. So I reached out to Steve to understand kind of why, and three main reasons came up. One, and probably the most obvious one, is the winter of 23-24 was much warmer than this last winter, which led to higher heating demand. Secondly, Xcel Energy moved to smart meters and there was some mess up with those, so it caused a delay in billing. So I think we're seeing an additional payment this fiscal year as a result of that. And then lastly, and most significant, the heat exchanger for the pool wasn't installed until about 6 weeks ago. And prior to that, Steve said the boiler had to work overtime to keep the pool warm. And now that that new heat exchanger is in place, we should see significantly lower energy costs going forward, particularly for gas. I don't know if you have any other questions.
Thanks for digging in on those, that's helpful information. I'm curious, when you talk about switching to monthly processing for the title, or the federal grant claims, do you have a sense now of, is that a lot of extra work for you and your department?
It's extra for sure. I don't know if I would characterize that as a lot of extra, but yeah, it's something that was done quarterly and now it should be done monthly, yes.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yep. Any other questions or discussion on the revenue and expenditure reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. We have our monthly employment report for April 2025. This is informational only. Are there any questions or discussion on the employment report? Then we're on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Heinz moves.
Second.
And tonight on the consent agenda, we have minutes from our regular board meeting of April 14th and our special board meeting of April 28th. Financial reports, the board approved, we have general fund checks in the amount of $2,411,763.60. And cash receipts in the amount of $116,746.67 for April. We had several donations exceeding $1,000 last month. $1,000 from Culver's Art Night for classroom supplies for our art departments. $2,636.51 donated from the Wakanda PTO for field trips. $7,430 in mini grants from grants from the Anne Marie Foundation. Including for instruments in the middle school music department, foot pedals for sewing machines in the fax classroom, and earphones for second grade classrooms at Wakanda Elementary. We had $1,782.09 donated to our school nutrition angel fund in April. Any questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, let's vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have the personnel consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda.
So moved, Amy.
Motion by Abe, second by Michelle. We have one resignation tonight. Any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. On to the action agenda. First up, we have approval of the SDMA employee handbook for 2025-26. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Amy.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Angie. We have the revision summary that we looked at 2 weeks ago, as well as the full handbook available here in board docs. And then there is a comparison of paid leave policies from other districts. Do you want to say anything about that comparison document or? Okay. Questions or discussion about that? Go ahead.
For all her hard work, because I know she put in many hours trying to gather all of this data. And I wanted to be able to speak articulately on this subject when people ask questions, because we do get a lot of questions about this, as I'm preaching to the choir here. And I'm proud of where we are right now and what we've been able to do. As I look at some surrounding districts, I think there is more we could do. I think in near future, we should revisit this with some of this data of what's surrounding schools. I mean, I just would like to keep that discussion rolling, what next.
Yeah, I think it was very helpful to look at the comparables to nearby districts and kind of think about what's kind of reasonable expectations, and we talk about like what the needs of the district are versus the desires of many employees. And I was struck looking at the comparisons that I think we're in there, right? It's not, we're not wildly out of whack in any way. And some districts have seem to have extraordinarily complicated policies. So I'm glad we haven't ended up in that very complicated world yet of all these different subcases. But yeah, it was very helpful to see this chart. And although there's not much discussion about the details necessarily here, it was very nice to see to kind of think through what it means. Thank you.
So what we have tonight are the changes to the employee handbook, which include changes to, well, minor changes to the paid leave policy, as we discussed 2 weeks ago. And it sounds like what we're saying here tonight, and I don't know, how the rest of the board feels, maybe it's a good time to take a temperature check. Like, it sounds like you're not suggesting we do anything but approve the changes as proposed tonight. And that for next year, or sometime between now and then, there would be some additional conversation or work done to consider policy changes around paid leave for the future.
That is what I'm saying.
Great.
Yes.
Good. That's what I understood. Does anybody have? Does anyone feel strongly differently than that?
No, in relation to that. I did. The only part that I feel a little unsure about, as I thought about it over the past couple weeks, is the 15-to-1 ratio for trading in days. I was thinking about this from my perspective of like I was still teaching. I'm not someone who probably would be saving up their time for maternity leave or whatever, so I probably would be someone who maybe had that, but as a board member, it feels a little bit like highway robbery, a 15-to-1 trade-in. So I was wondering if others felt that way, or like if 10 would be more, I don't know what the right word is for it, but 15-to-1 just feels like too much.
It is that number that jumped off the page for me as well. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we, after looking at data and ideas from other areas of it near us, that's what I was hoping we could keep talking about. And I'm also not opposed to, if you feel the need, it's the 15 that's weighing heavily on me as well. I left so many days on the table. I am one of those cases, and when I left New York, the same thing. So I know how that feels, but I also know how budgets feel, and that we have to work within what we can work, what we have. But I understand, because when you really break it down, 15 is a whole year. So they're basically trading in a year for 1 day, a year's worth of days for 1 day. And yeah, we have teachers that can do it. I just think that number is the thing that we need, that I wanted to also think about.
These proposed changes were developed after the last QIC meeting, right? Did you have any even sort of informal or anecdotal conversations with staff about those numbers? Like, did you have any chance to sort of see what people thought about it?
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to a few of the QIC members, and I didn't have any specific comments about the 15 to 1. I know people were very excited about the idea of having that opportunity. I think there's a number of people who have banked up a lot of leave, and the fact that we give 15 days, if you look at that chart, is the highest in the whole area. So I think that was kind of the idea. We only have 172 student days, and then you throw in a couple snow days, and we're down to 170 student days. So it's really hard to have people out because we have such a limited time to work with our kids. But no, that I didn't receive really much feedback either way on the number.
$15 to 1 does seem like a lot, but it's a lot better than it was a year ago. And so it's a first step, and I think comparably it's a good idea.
Yeah, I guess I'm of the mind, sort of on one hand, this is a first step, and this is responding to what folks brought up in the KIC meeting last time, and an option that people did not have up until now. I also know it can be chaotic to keep changing the policy year after year. So I don't know that, I don't know how iterative it makes sense to make this be, but I do like the idea that Michelle brought up of, this being an ongoing conversation about how to continue to improve.
Yeah, the ongoing conversation, I think in particular in the context of recruiting and retaining staff and keeping that as a main focus, right? That given tight budgets and a very competitive hiring environment, what nudges can we make that might make someone among this chart of options make us look attractive, right? And make someone stay who might consider one of the other schools on this list as a potential place to move. So definitely, I think always keeping our eye on what adjustments can we make to these policies like this that may have a budget impact, but also may have a significant recruiting and retention impact, and that's very, very important.
Any additional discussion or questions, either on the changes to the paid leave policy or, those are the really substantive changes in the handbook, but any of the other changes in the handbook as well. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have updates to policy 163.1, school board memberships. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Amy.
Second, Amber.
All right. So we have the addition of, formerly the Wisconsin Alliance for Excellent Schools Association membership to our list of school board memberships. Any questions or discussion on this? We've got brief information about the organization. This is the same sort of entity as the Wisconsin Public Education Network. And then we have this, potential invoice attached here as well. All right, if there are no questions or discussion, let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. Finally, on the action agenda, we have the transportation contract for 2025-2026. I'll entertain a motion to approve that contract.
So
Second.
All right, motion by Dominique, second by Michelle. Do you want to go ahead?
I'll just introduce, and then I know Michelle can comment. But Michelle was the school board representative for our annual meeting with Menomonie Transportation. Kyle and Ryan Howe came over, and we discussed everything, pretty much all facets of transportation, which Michelle could share. But very pleased that our contract with Menomonie Transportation, and more importantly, our partnership, continues to be very effective. And you all know how helpful Menomonie Transportation was and how much extra work they did in terms of studying potential solutions as we continue to investigate the situation with Downsville Elementary School. But with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, and she can make the formal recommendation.
I panicked there for a minute, like, yes, I could go on for hours. I am truly fascinated with the family history of how they have been a family-owned business for so long, and where they started out and where they are now. It's absolutely fascinating. So I probably extended that meeting much longer than Joe wanted me to. I was really enjoying myself. So, we offered a 2.95% increase, which is less than what they were hoping for, but what we were comfortable with, and they did meet us there. So that is basically the bottom line. I don't know if you have questions besides that, or Joe, if you think there's something else you want me to specifically speak to.
Do you know what they were originally asking for?
They didn't necessarily come out with a formal request. Typically how our meeting goes each year, and this goes all the way back when Dave was still alive and running the company, you know, it is fascinating to hear about all the different expenses they have, and they categorize the different increases that they have to deal with. But no, I think for years we have aligned that contract with the CPI and with what we increase our staff contracts for. There have been some times over the years where we've made some other modifications based on justification. There was no situation like that where that had to be considered this year. But you know, we did talk about a number of other things. You know, some of the regulations having to do with buses and the uncertainty with you know, the future of the buses and what may or may not be required. We did also talk about our elementary school enrollments. We did talk about the potential for maybe having to rebalance some of the elementary school enrollments in the near future, you know, moving from 5 elementaries to 4. And, you know, they're certainly willing to partner with us on that in terms of trying to figure out how we can get our kids to school in the most efficient and effective and certainly the safest way possible. But it was a really nice meeting, and we're recommending that the board approve this contract.
Some of the, for example, some of the things that, the costs that they use as examples were insurance, 18% off for them, and the cost of a bus, the buses is 13% increase. Tires, 5%, parts, 6%, oil, 10%. So obviously those increases impact them. That's where we landed on the 2.95.
Over the last couple of years, there have been shortages in many positions, including bus drivers. Did you speak about how they're doing in terms of keeping enough drivers available?
Staffing is always a challenge. My opinion is they're actually doing better now than what they had been. However, at that moment, and I think maybe even like today, they are having some people out with some medical leaves and things like that. So it fluctuates, but I think this year has been better than probably any year since COVID would be my impression.
Yeah, I know it's not rare for Tom to be out covering routes, so yeah.
Any other questions or discussion on the transportation contract? All right, seeing none, let's vote. And motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to the discussion agenda. Our first discussion item is the creation of the Downsville School Exploratory Committee. So we have the brief explanation, a link to a sample application form, I guess. Do you want to take this one?
Yes, as we talked about when the board made the motion related to Downsville Elementary School, part of that motion was to create an exploratory committee to explore options for the school in Downsville, and then to make a recommendation to the board by January 2026. And that recommendation, I would expect would be fairly general in nature in terms of, kind of what the next steps would be. I really appreciate the work that Brian has done, and Brian has agreed to chair the committee. So Brian Seglin, our Assistant Superintendent of Instruction, will be chairing that committee. And one thing we really want to do is we want to get the invitation out yet this spring, while we still have parents paying attention, also community paying attention before the school year ends. So over the next week or so, we plan to share out the invitation so people can apply to be part of this exploratory committee. And from there, Brian and the lead team will work on that. And we'll follow a process and have, what was it, monthly meetings you were thinking, Brian? Monthly meetings with a lion's share of the work done in the fall, so that we can bring the board kind of a recommendation by January.
One detail I didn't see in the documents was how big you, or small to be. Obviously that's up for who volunteers and so on, but thinking like 4 people, you're thinking 20 people, somewhere in between, hopefully not 100.
Yeah, so leaving it a little bit up in the air as far as total number. My general preference is once you get beyond, 12 to 15, it becomes a very large group. That being said, we want to make sure that it is as representative of our community as possible. So, taking a look and seeing what type of interest we have, and then I would say a target somewhere between that 10 to 14 probably would be ideal.
I think that's great. I would also recommend that in addition to sending out this kind of survey or volunteer form, directly reaching out to maybe some of the people who run, we heard a lot about 4K, the need for 4K. We heard a lot about different types of education programs around the area that people might be interested in, and maybe directly reaching out to some of the leaders in those groups. There's obviously you're in the 4K program here, but also know all the other 4K sites and not just 4K, but other things as well. So I think you're the perfect person to do this because of all those connections. Thank you.
Is there a certain, besides the number of people, is there a certain criteria you're looking for? Is it anybody who's interested can be on it up to a certain number, or is there some sort of?
Yeah, that's I think a very important question. As we take a look at forming this, taking a look at interested individuals that have a direct connection to the school district, but the community at large as well. So not just limiting it to individuals who currently have students in our school district. As you'll see in the example, there's an opportunity to identify both they currently have a student attending Menomonie school, but then also potentially not attending Menomonie school, but someplace else. We're interested in their voice as well, possibilities as to why that might be and how we meet that need.
Could there be an opportunity after the committee is formed for that committee to have kind of a listening session so that maybe people who aren't going to be meeting monthly and in that smaller group could still put out some of their ideas, and there's just so many people who are invested and talented and have things to offer that making sure that whoever's on the committee gets a chance to hear those things would be really nice.
I think that's good feedback. One of the things that, as we've talked about the work of the committee, how will they, solicit some input from the community as a whole, and what do those opportunities look like?
And, sorry, I have one more. But as far as the final goal, are we looking to have one recommendation that comes before the board,
or like several possible paths with the comparative pros and cons? What's the ideal end?
So the short answer is yes and
Can
possibly
you
yes.
scoot closer to your mic? I'm so
Sorry. Yeah. I would say the short answer is potentially yes to both of those questions. Depending on what type of discussion and what type of information comes forward, I think it's very, probable that, multiple, options and solutions may come forward. At the same time, we may see, having had similar type conversations in prior districts and prior roles, sometimes you'll see, one recommendation really come forward and solidify. But ultimately, the idea is to present the ideas to the board as a whole, so that you have an opportunity to provide feedback into that as well. You make a decision.
Yeah, I would not expect the board to have a, all ironed out proposal, but this is, I would say, more of a brainstorming where you would identify potentially multiple avenues, and then additional work would need to be done to really get a proposal together, figure out the finances and everything else that comes with it.
I assume this is probably a given, but I would really recommend that you definitely have some people from Downsville on that. I'm sure it's a given. But we didn't say anything in the thing, so I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that Downsville will be included. And also, we have some really great master teachers that I would like to see, as well, that hopefully would be interested in joining as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the question I had. Do you envision the committee including other staff, or will it mostly be you and like parents and community members?
Well, I would hope that we have some staff who are interested in helping form opinions, and that's one of the reasons why we want to get the invitation out here in the next couple of weeks. Not only while it's fresh on the minds of our community, but also while our staff are still in session in CACOM.
So this same form would be going to sort of any type of stakeholder? Okay. I don't know if you want notes on the form, because it wasn't clear to me that this form would be like welcoming teachers and staff to fill it out, so I don't know if there's like a little sentence that could be added in there, or one of the check boxes be a, I don't know, school district employee or something.
Yeah, it doesn't have that.
Sorry, I think I cut you off there. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all good feedback. I was going to say, as far as distributing this, the way in which we look at distributing this to get interest would be our district email, our social media presence, and then the district media partners as well, to try and cast a very wide net, because the people are both informed but have equal access to submit their interest.
As a board member, I know we get a lot of like direct comments emailed to us from community members. Would it be appropriate for us to send this one, once it's kind of published and ready, to send it to some of those people who are, particularly invested?
I don't think so.
Okay. Other questions or discussion on the Downsville Exploration Committee? Thank you so much for your work on this, Brian. I agree with Abe, but I'm very glad you worked on it. At the home. All right, next up, we have, Brian's still in the hot seat, I think, SDMA progress on Act 20.
Well, I'm going to try and talk very little with this one, and I'm going to turn things over as we go through to, as I'll refer to as my left hand. Tara Allison, our district reading specialist, is joining me here at the table. Just a real quick, as far as background, we've been reporting on our district's work on Act 20 throughout the course of the school year. It's one of our major goals, and I couldn't be happier with the work that our staff have done throughout the course of this school year, and a lot of that, much of that is thanks to the hard work of Tara in helping to plan and lead the implementation this year. Just a handful of items before I turn things over to Tara. From a professional development standpoint, I won't go through all of it, but all of our staff who are directly involved in the work at K3 with Act 20 and leadership have participated in a lot of professional learning this year. 6 days full of it when it's all said and done for each of those different employee groups, which is a lot of focused time, and it's been good. As far as our assessments, for our 5K students through 3rd grade, they participated in 2 rounds of screening assessment, and then depending on how they did on that, they may have participated in an additional round of what's referred to as diagnostic assessment, and we'll be able to get into how that information is being used, and Tara will talk a little bit about that. Our 4K students, our 4-year-old kindergarten students participated in assessment this spring. As part of that process, moving forward, 4K students will be screened twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, and our 5K through 3rd grade students will be screened 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. Some things as far as what's next. As a board, you have some work coming up here in the month of June. So we talked about the work that our staff had. You've got some as well coming your way next month. We are in the process of drafting a promotion and retention policy that's required as part of the act to have some information on. So you'll see that coming here in our June board meetings. This summer, we're doing some summer school programming specific. And then by July 15th, we have our first required annual reporting on Act 20. And with that, in general, we're going to be reporting to the state how many students were screened and had a score below the 25th national percentile, how many students were on a personal reading plan and received support from that, and how many students exited personal reading plans. So that's coming this summer. So what I've asked Tara to talk a little bit about here this evening is some of the background information that we have available to you, specific to some of our next steps as we go into summer school. So I'm going to turn things over to her.
All right. Oh, now it is. Oh boy, it feels like it was just yesterday I was here in November and like we didn't know what we were going to be doing. But I said to you, the main idea was that we were in good hands. And I think that's still true because we have been, I think Act 20 is our middle name, both of us. It's been coming out of our ears. But so with everything, we have students in all of our schools on personal reading plans, which is new. It's been communicated to families. It's kind of scared some of our families. It seems like an official term, an official document that's been sent out through our EduClimber system. So our parents, lots of phone calls to principals, lots of phone calls to teachers, worried, potentially, maybe, for the first time, they're feeling, we've got some children that they're being told, you're below the 25th percentile and you're on this plan, right? So we've been just working really hard to try and, keep everybody informed of what that means, and that it is a statewide thing, of course, and that helps everyone. But we have obligations for summer school as well. So we've tried, we revised our recommendation form. And we really tried to teach the teachers there were 3 options, and like one overall recommendation was for full-time remedial support at River Heights, and we put that as option 1. And we told our teachers what might be a good candidate for that type of remediation. And then our second one is we have a new and improved system at the high school for 1 hour a day with 3 very qualified teachers, exceptional teachers that I've been working with too, they'd be exceptional without me working with them, but really working on reading. So we have an hour support for identified students for option 2. And then option 3 for students that are kind of, at the upper end of this children that are in need, we put a little book icon under every class that was something to do with reading. So then their parents we told them in the recommendation form, look for a class that has a little book by it. So that was one thing that Brian and Stacy Lee and I worked on, is really just improving that and helping our teachers do the right recommendation. We also
We will be sending home a Summer Express workbook, which we have done several years in a row, but to every single student on a PRP. Oh, look at you smile. That started way a long time ago. Jill's loved that. But even more targeted. Will receive that with some great communication, letting their parents know this is going to help your child. You know, this is part of their personal reading plan. And that's just really our first step in I think what we'll be doing to create even a better summer school program for next year. So let's see, I can kind of stop and maybe if you have specific questions about Act 20 or anything that we're doing with families, anything you want to know, I'd be glad to.
I want to say I'm excited about the summer school changes. I think as a mom, I'm always like trying to sneak my kids into more learning classes at summer school, like sandwiched in between the fun stuff. And I love being able to be like, yes, that one is going to help you with me during the summer. We gotta get like a calculator one for math next year.
That's a really great idea. Thank you.
I'm curious, the information, the breakdown on, students who are qualifying for those personal reading plans is really interesting. Do you have a sense of sort of overall, like what, I guess I could maybe do the math, like what was the percentage of our K through third graders who are falling into those categories?
Right. Well, actually I do. It's about like 44% in kindergarten, a little bit higher in first grade. That target is really hard for our first graders because in school, we're teaching them to sound out words and to really use their phonics skills. And then we're putting a passage in front of them and telling them to read as fast as they can. And we don't say this, but there's no time to sound out words or their score is going to go down. So everything we're teaching, there's just a little bit of that. Anyway, so that's a little higher. It's more like 50%. And then it goes down in second grade. It's like 38% and then about 40% in third grade.
Mm-hmm. Do you have that further broken down into demographic information?
So, not by grade level, but with all grade levels combined, when we take a look at, we have raw numbers, we don't have the percentages, we have to sit down. But for example, when we look at our Asian students, 33 students are currently on PRPs across the full grade span. There are some grade levels that we're not reporting out publicly in a public format because it's less than 10 students and can be very identifiable. But when we take a look at our students who are identified as multi-race, 28 students, white, my almost 50-year-old eyes here, 212 students, white non-Hispanic 70. I would say within reason, it mirrors our overall demographics. If we look at the number of students who are on a PRP, we don't have one group that is drastically higher than the percentage of our total student population makeup.
And that's SES also?
That is not broken down by SES.
I'm really glad to hear about the communication with parents. I think that's one of the things that is going to make this successful. I'm curious if you have additional thoughts on how, other than maybe initial anxiety parents experience, how those ongoing discussions have been going. Now that we've maybe had a couple of recording times and letters come back, and how families are adapting to the information as it comes in.
Right. Just yesterday, or not yesterday, that would have been Sunday. So last week I was talking with a kindergarten teacher who their parents wanted something and she was showing me everything she's been sending home to families and that's something she wasn't doing before this. So it's just one tangible example. But I think our teachers are handling it really well. They're sending home extra things to read. Our teachers are really working hard there. A lot of them are doing interventions during their wind time that they've never done before. So I've been coaching in on a lot of those interventions to help our teachers learn them. So some of these numbers are going to go down just with intervention integrity. Like they're learning something they've never had to teach before. I mean, not the content, but the actual intervention. So you know, and like that we'll have more time in between our testing periods next year. Like these numbers are high, but there's 6 weeks in between the testing window because of just the idea of the time frame we had this year. So anyway, I think our teachers are doing remarkable, and they're sending home extra things. They're relieving some of their, you know, all on their own. Principals are getting some calls as well, but we have Act 20, so I mean, they are handling it very well as well.
I think when you have when you start to have continuous conversations over weeks and months between parents and teachers and principal, that's when progress is really made, right?
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, one of our interventions at Wakanda, or there's only one there, I just said her name. But she started sending home to a family she's really never had to talk to before, and now she's sending home these books, and this family's reading with their kids, and just their scores just went.
That's amazing.
Right.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, it is happening all over.
So the follow-up to that then is, how is the burden on our teachers? If someone's, say, a second grade classroom teacher, they have to maintain these reading plans, document them. We've talked about this a bit in the past, Brian, but how do you feel like the workload is being managed, as this is, of course, on top of all their existing responsibilities?
Well, I'll let Tara weigh in. What I will say is, you know, just with conversations as we moved through the process, you know, it continues to be a lot of work, but staff continue to talk about the efficiencies that we've built in. And the second time they went through reviewing reading plans, you know, it wasn't all new. Based on feedback, we were able to make some modifications to our process from the first go around. And we met with our multi-level systems of support team on Thursday last week, which all of our interventionists were in, and based off of some feedback, are looking at making some additional modifications going into next fall. All that being said, you know, staff, you know, routinely, you know, and I'll use the term, you know, step up and bear the weight of the role. You know, that's one of the reasons why we're trying to be as responsive as we can to the feedback along the way. Now, I say that Tara sits in the PLC meetings with them on a rotational basis, and shares a lot of that information as well.
I think they see the value in this Act 20. They really do. They see it benefiting their students. They call me and say, look at my progress monitoring results. But I really have done a lot with the train the trainer sort of method. That's kind of an older term, I think, but with our interventionists. So our interventionists, well, they can cancel class for a couple of days and get this stuff done, but they've had to because they've taken out a lot of the work, our 5 interventionists in each of the buildings. So they've built a lot of the skeleton of the plans. They've done a lot of the testing. They've executed a lot of the parent communication. So those 5 have done a lot, and we've taken the teachers with us. You know, we've taught them along the way, but luckily for the teachers that they have those interventionists that have done a lot to help.
I have 2 questions. Both are really curiosity-based, but I was thrilled to hear about the changes to summer school. I was very worried about that. You know, we see summer slide, as you all already know, every year. So I was super worried about the kids that had made such great gains and it's only been months. And there are kids that have made some tremendous gains, and I was very worried about that not happen, like losing all gains that have been made over the summer. So I'm getting to my question here. What is the teacher to student ratio in those courses?
At the River Heights?
No, the kids that I have PRPs.
Our sections are anywhere from 5 on the low end to about 10 right now. So it is lower. And when Stacy Lee asked for a report on numbers in each of the classes, Carla didn't report that those being below a certain number because they're tagged as remedial. So they can be a lower teacher to student ratio. We would like them to be lower.
but we're not turning away kids either. We haven't had to. but
Are you seeing a lot of our kids signing up?
Yes.
That's
So I'm actually going to do a preference with which PRP kids didn't sign up, and then I'm going to make him figure out how to communicate to those. I get these ideas and I say, Brian, how can we just communicate to these certain people? And then he helps me with it.
You're not off the hook yet, I still have my second question.
Okay.
Question number 2, so I value the PD that has gone into training, and I've heard even from teachers that they feel so much more confidence, that they know so much more about teaching reading, because it's different than the way they learned it. So this training has really changed what they're doing and what they're understanding. So and I've not heard any teacher tell me that they don't believe in this very strongly. So my question is, knowing that our K-3 teachers have had all of that training, what will happen, like what's the plan for kids in 3rd grade this year, moving to 4th grade next year when our 4th grade teachers haven't received that training?
Well, they have received some stuff along the way. So I've done some things during some PD days along the way. Like they are versed, 4th and 5th grade teachers, on what science of reading is and some of the 6-syllable rules of phonics and stuff like that. They've had some training on, which will continue into next year. I will be more free during PD days, because right now I'm doing what the teachers are doing with keys. But we know that is an area we have to do some things in August with. They have had some training along the way, not the keys training that you're referring to. So yeah, it's going to have to be from me.
I have full confidence in you. And interventionists in each building.
She's my friend.
Conflict of interest. Real questions. No,
So I'm coming at this from another perspective, the different hats that I wear in terms of reading instruction, what I do in my professional job. We have taught kids how to read and facilitated reading development before Act 20. And so for me, I just wanted to share a list of concerns just for everybody to kind of think about. I'm not saying we're not going to follow through with Act 20, I'm not saying that, but just different things I want people to think about. Specifically concerns with the $50 million that have not yet been released by the legislation that was supposed to go to districts across the state to support these Act 20 initiatives. And that includes trainings, curriculums, PD, you name it. It still hasn't been released. And you have districts that are on the hook then for that money that was promised that hasn't yet been delivered. The PRPs, personalized reading plans, that Abe alluded to as well, I was just questioning because I've heard different stories from different folks from around the state. Like, it has taken so much time away from their actual teaching. So meaningful instructional time is being devoted to writing these PRPs. I understand efficiencies and those having to develop that will come, but I'm thinking, are we really missing the boat here with how we are providing whole class instruction if teachers are having to focus their time on phonics instruction and writing of those PRPs? We're missing, I feel like, a larger portion of students. With the phonics focus, again, I'm hearing teachers sharing with me that they're spending 30 to 40 minutes on phonics. And when we think about reading, it's more than phonics. Reading is meaning. Reading is comprehension. Reading has the 5 pillars, right? Phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, comprehension, fluency. We are spending so much time, and I believe early literacy, I'm an advocate for it. However, we cannot neglect the other facets of reading. The screener concerns with Ames Web Plus. You just said there's 40 to 60% of students being identified as needing a PRP. And to me, that's alarming, because if it's supposed to focus on the bottom 25% of students and we're over-identifying, I feel like there's something with the screener, right? That we perhaps need to look more closely at. And I'm hearing kindergarten teachers and they're saying that kids are on PRPs because they're not naming a letter fast enough. And Tara, you alluded to that as well. It's not how fast you can name a letter. That's not how we read. We don't read as fast as we can and then get marked down because we haven't named a letter that fast. And to me, there's work done by Rachel Gabriel and talking about screeners and the research behind that and talking about, obviously, there's a purpose and a necessary step for screeners. We get that, right? It helps us determine where we need to focus our instruction. But Behind that screener, there is tied to curriculums that need to be purchased and professional development that we have to enroll in and trainings that need to happen, right? So to me, it's more of a larger money-making scheme, and this is my opinion only, that the screeners are tied to, right? And people are just fall in line, right? I'm gonna do this because again, we're here for kids, we're gonna help kids, we wanna help them read, boom. But we've done that before Act 20, right? We did that before Ames 1 Plus, help us identify those kids and create these PRPs. Teacher professionalism. We know teachers are under attack, and now you're telling teachers what they can and can't teach and how they can and can't teach, and this is the intervention you're gonna do, you have to use this curriculum, you have to do this training. I'm feeling this at the higher education level where I had to have all of our instructors complete the SARI-approved trainings. Multilingual learners, this is my biggest concern with how Act 20 disregards how we instruct multi-language learners. Specifically, there's research and strategies of which we are completely negating with how we instruct students who are multilingual learners. Are we assessing language or are we assessing reading? We are not doing due diligence, and hence why I asked the question about demographics, specifically, with those student populations, but also SES, right? So for me, that's one of the larger issues, again, is that we're using all of the assessments and all this data, but what are we really measuring? And to me, again, we have to look at what the research is showing us. And then, Brian, you were saying our work is going to be happening with the retention policy. And we know writ large that there's research showing that you retain students, it negatively impacts overall educational outcomes by retaining students. I was part a couple years ago, I was in Madison when all of this started happening, this talking with Act 20, and there were legislators and excellent and from Mississippi, the Mississippi Miracle, if you've heard of that, and they've implemented all of these Act 20 trainings, and literally our legislators took, it was a fill-in-the-blank law. You just fill it in, and because this is what's happening across the states, across the United States, this reading law. So for me, hearing and being part of this and thinking about how it's impacting our teachers, our students, our districts, financially how we're being impacted, the time teachers are being put under attack, I just want folks to understand the larger context of Act 20. And in my opinion, again, with the Mississippi Miracle that happened, for those of you that don't know, Mississippi implemented an Act 20 like reading programming, science of reading, which science of reading existed before science of reading. They implemented this type of instruction, and there's scores on that, absolutely, right? But when they assessed those third graders 5 years later in 8th grade, their comprehension scores were backward because they can sound out words like no, nothing, right? But their comprehension, understanding of text was negatively impacted because there was so much focus on phonics at that point. And again, I'm not saying no to phonics. We need phonics, that's a foundational skill. I firmly believe in that. But my concern, I just have larger concerns that I don't know what we can do to address it locally, but just understanding that there's more to this law than what you all have done, this amazing work, right? And these teachers are doing fantastic work with instructing students, but we have to think about the larger context in which the legislators are forcing this upon us. Thank you for listening.
Can I quickly just tell you a couple things to make you feel a little better? It'll be really quick, but I promise. But our plans are written quickly because of him. I mean, our EduClimber process has streamlined that. It is not taking our teachers hours and hours. Absolutely not. So we've got that going in Menomonie. Our resource that we bought 2 to 3 years ago, it is 30 minutes of phonics, it's 30 minutes of comprehension and 30 minutes of writing minimum, plus 10 minutes of read aloud. So it is
Is that the intervention?
That's not with intervention, that's core instruction. Core instruction. So yes, we are teaching 30 minutes phonics, comprehension, and writing every single day in our resource.
Right.
Okay. We have dismissed kids out of their reading plans before it started because of speed issues. Like, there's a human respect to that, and Brian and I worked with our teachers to talk with it. It has to go through families, but we coach the teachers through when it is a speed issue. We're human with that. We have interventions on all of those pillars, so we have comprehension and fluency and vocab interventions going, not just phonics. And the last thing, we have ELL students that aren't necessarily, their PRPs aren't directed on phonics. Their plans are written around language. So we've got some really good things happening despite some of the problems that you brought up. We really try to work out how to do that and stay within the law, but really keep that all into.
I appreciate that, and
Yeah, I know it would make you feel better.
Yeah,
I feel your passion.
Yes, I'm very passionate about this, and again, just trying to.
I was taking notes of what I could say to help you.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's just, but I'm glad we can have these conversations because I feel like other districts may not be having them. And to have folks like you that are leading, like having conversations with teachers and saying, yeah, don't worry, this is not a speed issue, right? This kid can identify letters within this.
I can tell you handfuls of students that we've dismissed because it was just based on speed.
Good. And then working with our EL teachers.
Yep, we are.
with Not being, assessing them language versus reading, but okay, thank you.
But you just hit on the head, Emily. There are other school districts in the state that maybe intend well, but they simply don't have the resources locally.
Right.
They might be partnering with their CISA, or they might be getting periodic support or leadership in this. And that's where we're so fortunate to have our experts in our curriculum department, Brian, Tara, Kylene, and Michelle before that. And we were ahead of the game, in terms of having interventionists, in terms of having summer slide materials, which I'm super proud of. I'll never forget that conversation. But anyway, but your concern is very real. But at the same time, I feel like compared to some districts, we're in a very good position.
Yeah, and I feel for districts that are counting on the reimbursement of funds to hire folks like you, right? That have that expertise and background and they're not going to receive it.
Exactly, and that's where our board and our district is already committed to that. So we're ahead of the game.
Wasn't there something, I was quite panicked about that as well, and you made me feel better, Tara Ellison, because you told me something about some funding that our district, it has been released to our district, and I was wondering, well, why hasn't it been released to colleges? Because I know Stout, it has not been released to, so can you share a little light on that?
Yeah, so we leveraged our ESSER 3 funds that we had available on the front end, trying to not tie that up for reoccurring expenses whenever possible. So our literacy resources option, we utilized ESSER 3, which was our COVID funds. And then we were able to get in on the tail end of its letters grant funding that was available on the tail end of ESSER 3 as well. Districts were allocated an initial dollar amount, but then they had the opportunity because not every district took advantage of that entitlement. So we requested additional funds and were granted some of those to pay for some of our initial training on the front.
So it's not from the state, it's from our district working to gain additional revenue. So the state has not released.
Not the funds directly for Act 20, no. That's come up in the Joint Finance
That's the
Committee.
50 million.
Right.
We brought that up when we went visiting.
You sure did.
But we managed our ESSER money very wisely.
Yes.
And that is reflected in this month's revenue report, I think, in the, under the federal grants, that is the ARPA letters grants. You can also see that. Sorry, go ahead.
And then the last thing that I'll say on the retention policy, as we have worked to put our initial draft together, we've taken a very intentional look at, regardless of what the outcome of a conversation, whether it's retention or promotion, to emphasize the supports that are in place for students when they move on. Because students who conclude their third grade year who are on a reading plan, we have to be very intentional on what additional supports will go with the student into fourth grade, setting us up for an opportunity to still be able to promote students when we feel that that remains in the best interest of the student.
I have a question, which is unfortunately a very big question, and also I think Tony just stepped out, so you don't have to answer all of this. This is an hours-long question, but how these interact with IEPs? I'll turn these back so I can see. Yeah, so how the personal reading plans interact with IEPs? We don't need a long explanation, just a quick summary of how the interaction happens year to year as the IEP stays with the student. the PRP might be more focused on a particular year of growth, so.
Yeah, initially a PRP would come before a referral process that may potentially result in an IEP. And then we've had a lot of ongoing conversations about how the plan's goals for students can help support goals that are already in place. And that's a piece that is still being worked out. There are some provisions that allow PRPs to be part of an IEP. At the same time, the discussion is that really what we want to be doing? Because it's possible that a student may fulfill the goal of their PRP, but that IEP is on a timeline as well that may not sync up with the timeline associated with the PRP. So very abbreviated answer to what you are correct is a very big conversation.
I'm very impressed with the knowledge of both you and all the training that you've taken, to figure this all out. I grew up with phonics and I'm a great reader. And I comprehend. I comprehend well too. But anyhow, and my question is, as you're doing these PRPs, you said some of them are just like you don't even start the PRP because they're doing so well. It's just the speed part that's not up to par. Right. Okay. So thinking of that, are you finding this year, because we just started this year, are you finding that kids are really getting through their PRPs well and then getting out of them quicker than you anticipated, or is that happening on a regular basis, I guess?
We had a lot of kids exit their PRPs in each of the big schools, or in all of the schools. And then we had some that added in. Okay, so we had some going both ways. There wasn't a lot of time in between these two screening windows. So I really think we're going to see a better picture of the answer to that next year when we have a full 10 weeks to do an intervention of what the child really needs, and then screen and assess, and then do another 10 weeks, screen and another week. So we have our calendar mapped out, so we will potentially have a full 10 weeks to. So did I answer that question?
That's good. Thank you.
I have, thank you for entertaining all of these questions. I'm curious about, so you said there's going to be 3 screening periods next year, and that is in addition to like the 2 rounds of forward testing that the kids are doing, right? Like, I guess I'm curious about the impact of all tests.
We've been screening our kids 3 times a year, K3, K5. So this replaced that. I mean, it's an exchange. And yes, forward for 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Got it. Okay. Do you find that teachers are feeling like the amount of testing is manageable in the classroom, or?
And our interventionists did a lot of it in teams. Our math people stepped in, our math interventionists, I stepped in and did a lot of it. I don't want to speak for them. I mean, everyone, is in a different situation. It was a lot. I mean, they had to learn the tests this year. They had to watch me do it so then they could practice it. And we made that a mandatory thing for every teacher so they could not just look at the number and know, they knew what that test was. So it was a lot this year because it was a learning year for us, but we made it. I don't know.
I'll just say, we try to be as intentional as possible, that when we layer in these screening assessments to replace existing assessments that we were doing as opposed to adding to, and then we're looking going into next school year, are there opportunities to align that more by level across our system? Because, the reality is, our state assessments are our state assessments, but how do we do that in the best way possible to get useful information? The short answer is, do our kids spend too much time testing? Yes. At the same time, there's a lot of valuable information that comes for it, and our staff are seeing the value in many parts of the testing to help evaluate what their kids are being successful with and where they're strong.
All right, Emily, had everyone to come to the table, I'm going to come to the table a little bit.
Okay.
So I think we've often heard in public comment a lot about, returning an emphasis in our schools to reading and math. Like, I think if anyone's, paying attention out there, this is absolute laser focus, highly trained people, deep knowledge, focused on getting the best reading outcomes we possibly can. So anyone who thinks that we're not focusing on reading and math and these other core subjects, like that's why we're here, right? And that's why you're here, and you're doing amazing work, and just like, I just want to emphasize that because I think it often gets kind of pushed aside in lots of other political discussions. But I mean, this work, it's hundreds and hundreds of hours of hundreds of people, and in particular, many specialists, interventionists who are focused on getting the best possible reading outcomes we possibly can, based on evidence, based on training, based on science, based on all the technical skill they've learned in their profession. So just want to say that.
I think we're real lucky to have our interventionists that we really put that foremost, and we've seen a lot of how that is helping our students. So that's appreciated.
Word on the street, Abe, is that they're coming for science and math next. So, get ready.
Then God retired.
Any additional questions or discussion on our progress on Act 20? All right, thank you for being here, Caroline. Thank you for. I'm sorry, go ahead, Neil.
So do you have more needs? Is there more that we could do as a board? Is there anything lacking that you need more of?
That's a tough one. I mean,
Could you repeat the question? Because I couldn't hear you very well.
I was just curious whether they thought they could do a better job if they had more resources available. Is there anything else that we should be providing?
Thank you.
I feel really good where we're at with our interventions. We've used, some curriculum funds, we've used Title I funds, and we have excellent things, materials. I mean, I really don't think I would ask for anything right now if I had this guy money here. I mean, time's always an issue. I mean, our teachers spent all 6 professional development days with their training, and they will tell you that if you talked with them, it was hard. Their last day of school on June 6th will be a PD day, or professional development on this. But we also have a teacher who's leaving, who's now going to be able to leave with this training certificate. That so I mean, there's lots of ins and outs of things, but I feel like we're doing good. Time, but everything is time.
Maybe smaller class sizes. I mean, seriously, if you were to ask the teachers.
Oh, I think every teacher would say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Dale made me think of a question. When you mentioned earlier about students leaving the plan and then adding students, because I was thinking about, is there ever potential for there to be a larger number of students that need a plan all of a sudden? I kind of think maybe no, but I was curious what those numbers kind of look like. Like, does it feel even?
Right, on the charts that you have in there, the first chart is from winter to spring and then spring till now, and the numbers are the same. So between the ones that exited and entered, it still was about the same number.
Okay.
I think that's the highest we'll see. I mean, I'm not positive for fall. I mean, there's a possibility that we might see a few more handfuls depending on summer slide when we do that testing. But I think it's about the most we'll see is right now.
Thanks.
I had a magic ball.
Any final questions or discussion? All right, I'm also just going to take this opportunity to remind everyone to speak into your microphone as best as you can. And remember, they are movable and they change angles, so just Get it where you want it. I know, there's no people. All right, thank you so much for being here.
You just told me it's time for me to go.
I didn't say that, just for Thank you for being here. Next up on our agenda is discussion of the high school engineering classroom and fab lab project. And I think we have Mr. Sterry here to discuss this with us. Hi, thank you. Oh, and Mr. Drake, I'm sorry. All right.
All right, so to start us off, as Rachel had indicated, Mr. Drake and Mr. Sterry are joining for this discussion. I just want to introduce this by saying, as you're well aware, one of our current strategic plan and major goals is to work on building and maintaining community partnerships, of which we have we have several great partnerships within our community. We were contacted partway through the year from 3M about an opportunity here at the end of the year, which is something that has transpired to a great update to our career and technical education classrooms. It's been a very, what I'll say, fast-paced time frame. And in your background, you have some of the design as well as an invitation to an upcoming ribbon cutting that is scheduled for next week. What I'm going to say with this is, the only thing that we're being asked of in return for doing this work is to continue to partner with companies like 3M in the future, so that we can take a look at these types of opportunities in the future. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Drake to talk just a little bit about how we learned about this and the work up to this point, and then Mr. Sterry is going to talk a little bit about the design and how the area in current tech ed was selected and where we're at.
Thanks, Brian. Helps if I turn it up. Thanks, Brian. So I was contacted, I'm not sure exactly, maybe 6 weeks or 2 months ago about this opportunity from a local individual at our 3M plant, and just she was wondering if we had a need or want to have spaces that are tech related, kind of get an overhaul. And so the answer, of course, was this seems to be too good to be true. But nonetheless, we looked into it, and turned out it was an outstanding opportunity for Menomonie High School. There's been a lot of work, a lot of planning. We meet weekly. The departments at the ASC have been extremely supportive and helpful. Kevin and Katie and everybody else have been really helpful with kind of what's been happening. And currently kind of an update where we're at. A lot of electrical work's been done, like in-ground electrical. A lot of painting's been done so far. We've moved out all of our furniture and equipment and things like that out of the 2 spaces. Kind of displaced some of our classrooms, but we've been able to replan about how that works. We've moved a whole computer lab so that they'd have the spaces to do that. And it is going to be really impactful. One, from a certainly aesthetic value, I think it's going to look a lot cleaner, sharper, and more inviting. Not that it wasn't before, but just really a refresh that way. And then some of the equipment that we'll be receiving as well is going to be helpful for our kids. And the hope, like Brian said, is that we are able to have just more of a spark and an interest in our technical education area, specifically engineering, for students to continue down that pathway and be interested in it, and really hopefully to continue to grow that program too. So that's kind of the gist of how it's happened. Like Brian mentioned, it's been a quick timeline. I mean, we are, next week, Wednesday seems fast, but we've hit all the deadlines so far, and so in the back of my head, they're all proving me wrong because I thought we'd be struggling a little bit, but they are right on top of it, very organized, and really excited to see that final product next week for sure. So I'll kick it over to Ryan, and he can talk a little more about the specifics with what the products are.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Casey. And what Casey had us do is, before we met with 3M in the Heart of America, who's a company that's expediting the grant writing processes, he had us come up with let's say a wish list of a 3-tier wish list in our facilities to provide for 3M and then also the Heart of America. So then they met and we had this wish list put together, and like Casey said, it was a tight turnaround, but these are things that we think about really on a real regular basis. So we boiled it down to 3 different labs: our construction woodworking lab, our metalworking fabrication lab, and then a fabrication and engineering lab. And after meeting with 3M, they expressed interest in the engineering lab and the fabrication lab. And then from that point, had us put together a list of equipment, furniture, mechanical rewiring, ventilation systems that we would be in need of to do this work. And it's been very, very exciting, and it's been great to partner with 3M and the community to do this work. So some of the equipment that we're going to get is in the engineering lab. We're going to get some new 3D printers. Ours were becoming to getting a little bit outdated. We're in need of replacement, new furniture, new storage. All of the wiring, like Casey mentioned, is now going to be put in the floor, so it's going to be a real clean look and really kind of make it look like an engineering environment, and that's really what we were going for. And then in the fabrication lab, a lot of that same type of equipment, updated storage, updated ventilation, a new laser engraver, a new CNC router, and with really, the hope of, expanding, the population that are using and utilizing those facilities across all of our curriculum area. I hear a lot of discussion about reading and math and science. And what a great way to really put all of those subjects to work. So we're very excited.
This is really exciting. Oh, go ahead. Cool.
And I was just going to wrap up. And then, as Ryan indicated, one of the goals, and Casey had talked about, one of the goals is to generate interest in the career and technical education area. And if you remember from your tour of the high school, we have some great spaces, but part of this process is drawing students in with a refresh of that hallway. So in addition to the 2 lab spaces that they're working on, there'll be some updates as far as some of the signage outside of each of the different career and technical education areas, highlighting some of the type of work that's being done in an area to really mimic what you may see in industry. And then some of it, if you think about when you walked into some other spaces, if you've been on campus at Scout, with some of the graphics that are on the walls and showcasing student work as well as what somebody in the field might be doing at that point in time.
I think it's a great opportunity. I think these kind of partnerships are fantastic, and I'm really excited to see this kind of modern, computerized makerspace available and state of the art. That's great. One very, very minor point, but one I want to note because I didn't have time to look it up before the meeting. I noticed that in the layout of the space, there's lots of 3M logo stuff. And I just want to be sure that that is consistent with our endorsement or advertising policies. I've not checked that it's not, but just something to double check that we're not outside of policy putting up giant corporate banners in our space. So, we've had an opportunity to go through and take a look at that and feel comfortable at this point that we are in compliance with that. That was part of our initial conversation. They are not asking to have anything renamed, in their name. All right, thanks for your diligence.
I want to say thanks for, it sounds like this was a really fast timeline, and it did sound like something that was too good to be true. So I appreciate your work in sort of sticking through that and making it happen. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our district. I was curious about the ribbon cutting next week. Is that invitation going to be sent to local media or other community members?
Yes, so we're coordinating with 3M. 3M is handling a lot of the communication out to media, and then make sure that we get this out, for you as well.
Great. Yeah, I hope to attend, but I also think it's a great opportunity to showcase the partnership and the opportunities that this is going to bring for our students in the high school.
And in particular, if there's other local manufacturers or members of the chamber who might want to be invited to support similar efforts in the future, that would be fantastic.
Is there any follow-up required on our part as far as reporting outcomes or tracking things that happen in the space? I know anytime you get a grant, there's a lot. With this specific thing, is there anything over the next year or 5 years that we're going to need to monitor?
Not really, would be the quick answer. It's pretty much, they're being extremely generous, of course, and invested in us using the space, us using the new equipment, and that's really it. There isn't really anything that we have to do. There's no reports that we have to create. Certainly we'll keep track of, course requests and those types of things like we always do, but not anything formal that way.
When we posed the initial question of, what is the follow-up, 3, 5, potentially 10 years down the road, they indicated at that point in time, their statement was, the purpose for doing this is to try and draw interest into these career pathways, and it aligns very closely with where they see their current workforce needs at, and this is how they feel they can help support the future workforce.
I have one more. Is there anything with the space or equipment that is going to shift what the what our work plan looks like, as far as physical space and equipment and things that need maintenance or?
No, it's just going to enhance what we're already doing. It's equipment that we're comfortable maintaining, and we feel will definitely help our curriculum and hopefully increase our student population that are taking these courses and benefiting from these courses.
I think this is awesome. I forgot to have my excited face on. But I'm excited about it.
And one question, just to circle back to the accountability piece, we did have communication with the Red Wing School District, who just received a grant very similar to this, and they echoed the same thing that Brian and Keith had mentioned, and of course that was one of our big concerns. What is the accountability piece of it? So yeah, and they're very happy with the work that was done.
I would think that 3M would benefit from this because they'll probably get students out of this, so that might be helping them get their employee base up. So I think that might be the accountability piece right there.
Yep.
I just want to say I'm really impressed with the whole project and all the work that you're doing, but especially the benefit of the application of reading and writing and math skills and science skills that they're learning and using them in a practical environment. It's so important.
Any additional questions or discussion on the engineering classroom? Thank you so much for being here tonight, and this is really exciting, so thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having us.
Next up, we are reviewing student and parent handbook changes for 2025-26. We have a lot of documents attached here. These have, you'll notice for each level, high school, middle school, and elementary school there, as well as the virtual school, there is a document of the proposed changes, as well as a document of the entire handbook. I'm having trouble with board docs. I don't know if anyone else is, but did you want to say anything about this to get started, or?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the principals for their work on this. I know the principals typically work with their building leadership teams throughout the year to identify areas of the handbook that could be improved, and also the virtual handbook. So thank you to everyone who had a hand in this. And I guess with that, we could open up to any questions that people might have.
questions or discussion about any of the changes to the student parent handbooks? Go ahead. Will these come back for a vote in June?
Yes.
Okay.
I was gonna say, this year the changes seem fairly minor. It's really just wording updates and a few minor tweaks here and there. No major sections that I've noticed that were really changing very much so.
Yeah, we've had some real nice consistency with our principals, which I think really helps, also with our staff and the leadership. So I appreciate all of our lead teachers and principals doing this work.
All right. If there's no more questions or discussion, okay. Our next agenda item is our annual technology department report, but our technology director has just stepped out. Do you want to wait a second? Do you want to go?
You were supposed to take longer on it.
I know, I expected more discussion on handbooks. Oh, here she comes, great. Sorry, Katie. We are ready now for our annual technology department report that you've been waiting months to deliver to us. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have allergies, so if I sound a little rough. So in our report, our staffing has stayed the same. We did have turnover for one of our system admins. So Gary Dorchi is new to us as of December. And he came from CBTC with quite a bit of experience and a little bit of prior experience in K-12. So he's been onboarding very quickly. Then we have some statistics for our Google Suite. And I would say most of those are fairly stable. March is kind of a hard month. I always take the March data, and it's a hard month to measure because spring break is in there. So I think that accounts for some of the adjustments with like Google Classroom activity and some of that stuff because it looks at, I'm trying to remember, like they have to access it within a certain number of days. So the kids and staff take the spring break as a break and they're not clicking in there. Sometimes that can lower the class count even if those classes are in existence. That makes sense. So I think that accounts for some of that fluctuation. And then the number of accounts that we have active drastically can change the numbers of emails in and out, as some of us know as we try to manage our inboxes. And then our storage is steadily increasing, but I think at a reasonable rate. We do monitor our storage closely. Device access, that's one thing that really stabilizes over the years for the most part based on our staffing. We do manage several different operating systems and a variety of hardware. So we are actually a little better than one-to-one when you look at some of the alternative devices we use with our students, and that helps us provide devices when things are broken and need to be fixed. Our help desk, I think students are much more comfortable putting in tickets, and they'll do, if they run out of printing at the high school, that's been kind of a change. A lot of the students put in their own ticket to manage that this year. But we also do have rather high damage rates with our 612 devices, and that also accounts for an increase in numbers there. And then our staff tickets, every time there's an entry or withdrawal of a student, we have a ticket to prepare a device and get that to the student to make sure that their account is active. So that number has increased as well as we kind of add those things into our ticketing system just to track where we are in dropping off those devices. Cybersecurity staff training, we do an annual training every fall, and then we do have to fish our staff, which is not meant to feel like it, so we work really hard to try to put the focus on
reporting and not like, oops, you clicked on that. So we do give Swedish Fish every month to people who don't fail any of the tests and do a report, whether it's a valid fishing or one of the fishing tests. And then even really embarrassingly, we have a giant marlin stuffed, and the person who reports the most fishing attempts in a month gets their picture taken with that and a bag of goldfish crackers. So is it a little gimmicky? Yes. Does it get people talking about fishing and like wanting to report? Yes. And some people don't even like the fish, and they know who does and collects them. But it's kind of like their little trophy for the month. So it works for us. But and we're kind of a cheesy department, so we like going around with those things. But I do think it does really help keep the focus positive. And I think, well, fishing training is great. I think something we'll be looking at down the road is how can we do more email encryption and things that prevent some of the need for fishing. Because, I mean, it's really high stakes. Like, you click on one wrong thing, and it's a really bad day, and nobody wants to be in that position. So I think as we go down the road, one of the things that we'll look for in advancing our cybersecurity is how do we make it so that one email that would be really bad if clicked on doesn't even make it to people, so that there's not such high stakes. The next slide shows the Wisconsin Cybersecurity Response Team. So this is a group that is a statewide public group, so it's mostly cities, counties, K-12s, and other like nonprofit entities. There are some hospitals in the group. We meet once a month. We have people that are trained responders. So we're more on a membership level, and we attend some of the trainings that are provided, but I'm not going to go out to another district if they get hit with a cyber attack. But we do have all of those stars represent somebody, at least one person in that county is trained as a responder that would travel and participate if there was an event that a state-run group would need assistance with. This year, I believe we're at 25 incidents now that we're in April, and that means that someone called that CRT and asked, and responders were needed to look at logs and investigate. It might be phishing, it might be, well, you've heard of maybe Power School had an incident this year. So all of those districts had assistance in working with Power School and in mitigating any data leaks that would be a result of that. Excuse me. So 24-25 highlights. We did update our camera servers this year, and we had several cameras. Not all of our cameras needed to be replaced, but we had several cameras that were out of updates that needed a refresh. So that was all completed this winter. We kind of started over the summer. We refreshed our network switches at Oak Lawn in the high school this year. So now all of our equipment is good to go for until it's end of life for our network switches. Promethean panels were installed at the high school. And a summer project that'll be on the next slide is refreshing at the elementary. So all of our 612s have the new Promethean boards. They installed them in 1 week during spring break. It was quite impressive. They really had like teams uninstalling everything and then installing and moving boxes, and then Morgan and I were chasing them around to get everything on our Wi-Fi network and updated and in our management system. So it was an exciting week. We did move from Jamf to Mosel for managing our Apple devices. In large part due to cost, we get quite a discount for using Mosel with our Apple computer purchase this last year. And that was a change we could make to save money in our department without teachers really feeling that burden. To them, they're just logging in. There's minimal change on their end in making that change. It was a bit more lift for our department, but we thought that was worth the cost savings. We also switched to the Nutanix hypervisor for interacting with our virtual servers. We had been using VMware. I don't know if any of you are familiar with VMware. Many of our local organizations are lucky that they're on like 5-year contracts. We were at the end of one. They were increasing their prices from like $5,000 to $25,000 a year. So a lot of people are working on what are we going to do when our contracts are up. We had to do that sooner than later because we had Nutanix. So we also made that shift over the summer. Right now, we've just started a pilot with Benetech. I'm pretty excited about this. I attended a webinar and they're like, hey, you're the only one from Wisconsin. And I'm from Wisconsin, and so how'd you like to participate in this national pilot that we're doing with about 10 districts? And so they are providing a supplement to look at where we are with our ADA Title II compliance. They're reviewing our entire website for compliance, and they'll be offering some free professional development to our staff. So it's really a great opportunity. So we assessment, and I get to learn kind of where we are on that and see the recommendations, and I'm sure they'll start tailoring their PD to that. And really, the benefit of the pilot for them is that they learn from us kind of what school districts need. They work with a lot of organizations, but mostly higher ed. So K-12 is a little bit new for them, and so this is kind of a learning experience for them and for us. We're also switching from School Messenger to Parent Square for next year, so we're underway on that. So we've been doing a lot of back-end work to get Skyward connected and have all that data where we need it. And we're almost to the point where we're getting into professional development. So I'm sure that'll be a big push, maybe for our admin team over the summer to learn how to use it, and then for our teaching staff to have access to that in the fall. Screen that up. And then we have since finished updating all of our analog phone lines to digital or cellular options. So they're either connected now to our network, or they are working on cellular, depending on the building and what the signal is. And then our fax lines, we converted all of those to eGold packs, which we had started in this building a few years prior. And then for goals and upcoming projects, we did just do an RFP and award a contract for managed print services, so we're going to continue with our current vendor, but they'll be providing new copiers in July, so that will be a lot of working with them on the configurations between now and July, so that we can just swap things out more seamlessly. We are also evaluating content filter solutions, so right now we have iBoss, we are looking at several other options. It's very intense to test those because we have to set up and configure their whole environment so that we can then pretend to be 7th graders and search for all the things and see if we're able to get there or not. So there's been a lot of giggling in the department lately, or a lot of like, oh geez, kind of faces, but I feel like by the end of this month we'll have made a confident decision in what we want to move forward with. For the Promethean panels, those are planned starting in July. We're already having meetings to prepare and work on their project management. We continue working on disaster recovery planning, network redundancy, and cybersecurity awareness and practices. So we're always looking at, is there something we can afford? What is insurance maybe going to require us to do next? We're always trying to, see around that corner for kind of a 5-year plan. And then we also continue to promote effective technology integration and providing professional development opportunities. Any questions? I know that's kind of a lot.
So congratulations on the VMware change. I wonder how Broadcom is considering their business decisions recently. On the cybersecurity training, I noticed that the fish prone is going up a bit, and you know that could be for a variety of reasons. But one thing I wanted to point out from my work in my company doing a very similar sort of report recently is that the phishing that we're seeing is much more. It's much harder to detect than it used to be. It's not just Nigerian print scams or whatever, right? I mean, with someone like Dr. Zadowski who has thousands and thousands of pages of public content out there and voice recordings, right? Someone could get a voicemail that is his voice mimicked, right? Saying whatever, asking for something. Someone could get an email which is exactly the way he writes and sorts his emails with the right header and footer and everything. And it's extremely difficult to detect. And those sorts of attempts are now automated in a way which is astronomical. It's really actually quite worrying. So, and then you're looking into like the web filtering around, you know, the environment to make sure that people have that. But I think I would, my professional background would be to encourage trainings which really do let people be aware of how intense those tools are and how much if there's even just the slightest sliver of a doubt, just, calling someone back and saying, hey, did you just leave a voicemail? Because it didn't seem quite right.
Yeah, it is. Even in our personal lives, I think
exactly.
like things have gotten so sophisticated and these attackers use a lot of AI, and so they're incorporating a lot of AI into solutions, which I also get a little leery about, but as it's pretty new, but I think things are coming. We do also do some dark web monitoring just in case, because if someone clicks on something and they don't know it's bad, so, it's possible things can slip. So we do monitor, and then I think being part of that CRT group, they are monitoring their blacklist too. So they have FBI watch lists. If DOA might call us and say, hey, we see these credentials out there, and then we can respond.
How do we get somebody in Dunn County to get one of those stars to be, right?
I think it's a challenge. We have some great people, especially at the county level, that I think would be great responders, but I think, like all of us, it is a time commitment, and, it's a training commitment in addition. I do know, I'm pretty close to some of the Eau Claire County responders, and they've really put in an effort. We are a part of the SYNC network with that group, so we meet every other week at CBTC, and I think there's been a push there to get people more involved, but I do find that our city and county don't always have the time to participate even in some of those meetings, so it has been a little bit of a challenge to grow that, but I do think we do have people very close to us who are also good responders, and really it's a statewide effort. I mean, they'll bring in the National Guard. I know districts really close to us have had people come in when they've had incidents. So it's very tied. There are several federal and state level organizations. The Wisconsin Emergency Management runs that, so it's basically like Wisconsin's version of FEMA. And when you call that number, you don't select drone support. You tell them you had a computer incident, and then they put together a team within an hour, and they will be responding typically like in a Teams meeting and provide a secure way to share any logs. And in that time, they'll determine if they need to send a team out. So we're really lucky that our state is very inclusive of school districts in that process, and in that group to both provide the professional development to us, whether or not we act as responders, and to do a high level of like, do we really have an incident, or does it just not feel great? Can you help us decide if we just need to change a password and we're good, or if something maybe really happened here? So they'll walk you through all that, and then you have to kind of make decisions about your insurance and whether or not they're okay with other people coming in to assist from that point. But I think that organization is really critical that school districts in particular are a part of, because it is, like, we're paying for that with our taxes already, and it's a free resource after that.
Any other questions or discussion on the district technology report?
I would just like to point out, I'm glad Casey recognized both Katie and Kevin with the 3M grant, because when you look at everything that Katie's already doing, and then all of a sudden there's this 6-week opportunity to do this grant, and when people go to Katie and say, hey Katie, it's not like you just do it. I mean, there's been a lot of extra work for her and her team, and it's not just the 3M grant. There's been every year there's always something, and she's always been very on top of it. And sometimes the lingo gets a little bit above the other administrator's head with some of these terms, but we are so very fortunate. So great job.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, we're all set. Thank you for the great report as well, and for everything you do. All right, moving on. Our next item is discussion of the high school improvement plan. So there's quite a bit in board docs. This agenda item is meant to give us an overview of some of the actions that have been going on recently with respect to, if you'll remember, the staff perception survey that we looked at last time, and other work regarding the high school improvement plan. Do you want to start by giving any kind of overview, or do you want to go straight to questions and discussion?
I don't have anything to share.
Okay, great. Then I guess we'll start with questions and discussion.
Cool, I'll start since I put this on the agenda. Where I would like to start is just talking about the recent admin visit to the high school this last week. Sorry, today's Monday. I think I provided the sort of summary and public comment. I didn't add anything after that. I think that the board is on the same page of the cell phone policy and how we have it and the benefits. And so I don't really, not looking for necessarily a rundown of that, but I would like to start with just detailing how the visit went from your perspective.
Sure, thanks. Like I wrote to the board members, I visited, and it wasn't an admin visit, it was a superintendent visit. I visited the high school last Tuesday, and as you look at the staff perception survey, this was a big year for the high school. I mean, coming off of back-to-back years where the high school was a 2-star school with the school accountability reports, and meeting few expectations. Mr. Drake and his team, not just for this year, but the last few years, have really been working hard on an improvement plan. And as you're aware, some of the major goals for this year included changes to expectations related to the use of cell phones at the high school by students, and also the use of the study hall period. And I think the school year started off quite well in that respect. And the feedback we received at the semester with the staff perception survey, I thought it was pretty good. When we looked at the staff's perception of how effective some of the different measures were, it seemed like there was pretty good support for that. It was noted, however, in the survey that there were some concerns with consistency, not only with students following the expectations, but also with staff implementing and enforcing the expectations. Recently, I've had a number of students and parents and high school staff members report that, especially after we got through the different assessment periods, that the use of the cell phones and the productiveness during the study hall periods was starting to slip. So I did visit the school on Tuesday during the study hall period. I visited as many classrooms as I could, but almost all of them. And I will say that I was really worried going in. I thought perhaps we were going to have real wide-scale problems. Generally, however, I was fairly impressed. I thought most of our students, a high majority of our students, were engaged in productive activities during the study hall time, not having to have anything to do with a cell phone. And most of our staff members were very, very active in terms of working with students, using that time exactly how we set up the expectations and how you would hope that you would see your teachers working with the students. There were some situations though, I'd say probably a couple dozen students who were gaming or doing other non-productive things. There were a few staff members that were not engaged with the students, and there could be a variety of reasons for that. But after my observations, I did send a message to the high school staff reiterating the expectations for that period. I wanted to make sure that the staff knew that we still had 12% of the school year left. I mentioned earlier today we only have 172 days. We can't afford to take May off. And so I wanted to provide a greater emphasis on that, and I think it was well received. Certainly some mixed reception. I know some people were very glad to see that, some people maybe not so much, but I do appreciate the work that everyone's putting in.
You mentioned all of the observations, but what were your interventions, if there were any?
I don't know what you mean by intervention.
So you said that you observed things, but like, did you engage with students and staff?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, when I visit the high school, I think I always engage with students and staff. And there were a few situations where, and the nice thing is I know almost all the students, having a senior over there myself and twins who are sophomores. Many of those students I either coached in Little League or something like that. There was definitely some students that I asked, they were on their phone or playing a game, and I asked them, are you sure you have any work to do? Maybe you should get to work, type of thing. It was a nice visit.
So you feel like most of the students you talk to, you know?
Oh,
Is that what you
absolutely.
said?
Yeah, most of the students, yeah.
And they know you?
Most of them, yeah.
Okay. Have the admin at the building stopped into study hall classes to check in with teachers in the way that you did?
I would assume so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I've gone to every single classroom in one study hall, but we stop in and see how things are going. A lot of times we spend time in hallways as well, just making sure kids have passes if they're going places. But part of what we do is make sure that kids are doing something academically related.
Can I ask a question, please? Well, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. Very respectfully, I think we just need to be really careful about what we're talking about right now, because if this treads anywhere near something having to do with job performance, then that is not what was on the agenda, and we have to be really careful, because I'm learning new things by watching the videos on WASB, so I just want to make sure we remember that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good reminder. If there is a point at which we feel like there's more questions that need to be asked that should not be discussed in open session, we can talk about, potentially scheduling a closed session at our next meeting.
Yeah. If you feel like one of my questions is beyond the scope of how the visit went to individual, that's fine to let me know. Here's my concern. I am curious about the teacher's perspective of the admin coming in, and as you said, it was the superintendent visit, so I guess I don't know if that's what I should say instead, not the admin, but the superintendent coming in to address students without context. it's hard for me also, to envision that the majority of our students do know who our district administrator is, and their behavior would be positively reinforced by someone they don't know calling them out in front of students. So I'm a little concerned about that aspect. But two, also the teacher experience. You know, are we preserving their authority in the classroom? Like, were some teachers addressed in front of students? And I guess I'll add a third since I'm going. I've kind of seen this before, but my concern is if specific teachers are continually not following the plan the way we want it to, I'm curious why those situations are not addressed, especially by building admin that would most have a relationship with them, rather than doing something that could negatively impact a larger group of people, even if we did not intend that to happen. Those are kind of my three things at the moment. Would you like me to address?
Are you asking me a question, or?
All right. Yes. Let's start with.
What is this? Is this like a complaint, or I don't understand what we're doing right now.
Okay, I'll explain it to you. I am in reading the high school improvement plan, the major goals and activities. I see that we have listed that there have been admin visits, and we know this week there was a superintendent visit, and so
I took 3 visits this week.
Okay, so I know about 1, so there have been 3. So I would like to know more about that visit, and I would like it to be a discussion where we walk through how did this visit go? Did it have all the results that we're hoping for? Is it in line with our goals? If you feel like my questions are leading that this is a performance problem, then I'm happy to move it into a closed session.
I don't know if that's how you're asking it.
I don't know how I can be clearer than what I just said.
Do you want to start with, so part of you, what you were saying, it sounds like, is maybe asking for a little more detail on how the visit aligns with the specific goals and major activities related to the high school improvement plan? Am I summarizing right, paraphrasing right?
Yeah, I think the other issue too is that I would like more information about how the visit went. And because this visit, as you said, was a superintendent visit, not like a group of people, it feels more directed. Does that make sense? Like there aren't 5 other people, it was a one employee visit. So if I want to know how are the interactions between yourself and teachers, how are the interactions with students, what were their responses? That's the kind of information that I would like to get. Because I'm not saying that they were right, I don't know what they were.
Can I ask, how is this question any different than any evaluation or anything that Mr. Drake or any administrator would make over any issue, a disciplinary issue? I mean, this is the administrator's job. We want to make a high school the best. We want to prepare their students for the future. We don't want them on their cell phones. They have a rule to follow, put their cell phones in a case. And any help that can be given by administration to accomplish that goal is positive. I don't understand the line of questioning. It's not our responsibility. I think the question is overstepping our responsibility.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Dale. I mean,
One moment,
I'm looking
please.
at
I would like to
policy.
respond to that.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm looking at policy 443, and that's the student behavior code of conduct policy, and the first.
Excuse me, I would like to respond to that first.
I do think Dale's question was aimed at Dominique.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have not placed judgment on conduct. I am asking what was the process, because I would like to know if that process falls in line with our district's values and what we have said as a board that we want to see in the relationship improving. And right now, I can't even get the answers to my questions about what this visit was.
Do you want to continue what you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the first sentence in the policy for student behavior code of conduct,
Can you remind us what policy you're
it's
talking about?
443. Says the school district of the Menomonie area delegates student discipline to the professional discretion of the district administrator and his or her staff.
So here's my question.
Yep.
I'm asking you how this visit went. I don't know that your interactions with these students are disciplined. Like, you're assuming that. And so that, like, I'm trying to get information about how this meeting went, and I feel like it's being assumed that I'm against it. And the reality is, I don't even have enough information.
Well, I think I just explained it earlier that I visited as many of the high school classrooms as I could during the study hall. I observed what the students and the staff were doing. That was most of it. And like I said before, there were a few students that were engaged in behaviors that were not aligned with the expectations. In some of those cases, I addressed the students and I didn't reprimand anybody or write anybody up or send anybody to the office or anything like that. I did suggest to a couple students, I didn't even suggest, I asked them if they had work to do. I said, you know, are you telling me you have no work to do? And actually in one case, the student said, no, I'm all done with my work. And I kind of looked at the teacher and the teacher nodded and I said, great. And I walked. And actually, I think I probably gave 3 compliments for every one question that I had in terms of how the students were behaving and how they were using their time.
I'd like to maybe broaden the question a little bit. I think there's some context here, which is that, board members did get emails from some parents and or community members or staff about like, hey, there's this visit that some people weren't comfortable with. And I think Dominique is very delicately trying to figure out if there's anything there in a way that makes sense. Because
okay, now this makes more sense.
Because the questions were, there was not like emails with accusations or anything. It's just that it's unusual for us to get emails from staff saying, hey, Dr. Zalewski's at the high school and you might want to look into that, right? And that, and so I think it's trying to be very careful about in the context of the policy, thinking about like, let's talk it through, right? In a way that's trying to be even-handed and listening, just for that context. That said, I think that there is a worthwhile, let me ask a broader question which might help us refocus a little bit, which is, what are the cell phone policy, I agree, I think is a very important thing. I think having students focus on their work is very important. What collection of strategies and tactics and tools from the classroom teacher up to the principal, up to the district administrator, do you see as out there that can be used? And how does a visit like that fit into that collection of tools?
I see. I thank you. I understand it much better now. I didn't recognize that all of you had been contacted like that. Well, and actually I'm glad, if you look at what Mr. Drake provided, I mean, there has been numerous reminders to students and staff in terms of what the expectations are for the study hall period, for the use of cell phones, and the other things like, the safety protocols with backpacks and things like that. And you can see it's really consistent throughout the entire school year. Also in terms of staff, again, Mr. Drake and his team did a really nice job creating the Menomonie High School staff guidelines. That's an attachment. And where it clearly lays out exactly what the expectations are. And when we look at trying to improve the high school, we have this dedicated period of time which is called study hall, but it's not like most people would remember a study hall from when we went to school. This study hall time is a perfect opportunity for staff members to know their students, and our expectation is that those study hall, it's almost a blend between a study hall and a homeroom and an intervention time. But that's the time when the homeroom study hall teacher, we expect them to have a very good knowledge of the performance of their students in their homeroom, and to work with those students who need additional reminders about completing their work, helping to direct them to additional resources if they need that. Is a real powerful time if used appropriately. If not used appropriately, it's kind of a waste of time. And that was one of the biggest areas we felt we could improve in high school. Did that answer your question, Abe? Was there more to it?
Yeah, I think it was a start. I think maybe that puts into context the questions that Tommy was asking about. Like, okay, so in the context of the visit last Tuesday that you made, like, how do you see that as either reinforcing, or I think a concern might be, whether it's real or not, that might does that visit reinforce the messaging of the principal and the classroom teachers? Or is there a chance that if it's unexpected from the teacher's perspective, it might undermine their relationship with the student? And I think that might be some of what was being related, and there might be concern about. And so, trying to navigate that, and taking Dale's point about what the scope of responsibility is here, but just so we understand like how this very important plan is being taken and how each layer of staff fits into it. And in the context of Tuesday then.
Well, my biggest thing for Tuesday was to observe what was going on. And that was the lion's share of my visit to the high school. And then when I do make it, I meet with the principal and talk about what I saw and what's working and what's not. But while I'm observing a school, if I see issues, depending on what the issues are, but generally if I see an issue, I at least address the issue. When I see students in the hallway who are in the hallway after the bell rings, I don't care if I'm on there on an observation or if I'm just, visiting, for some other reason. I ask the student where they're supposed to be and if they have a pass. And that's part of the problem, is that the consistent expectations of our school employees is so critical, so that the students are used to the expectations and so that they follow the expectations. And I know there's a couple students, I'm sure, who don't like being asked if they have a pass, but I think that's absolutely not only within our realm of ability, but also responsibility. And then, like I said, in terms of the classroom, definitely some situations. There was one student that I walked into the classroom and he was playing a game, and I was standing watching him play the game for probably 2 minutes almost, and he didn't even know I was there. And I guess the frustrating thing for me in that particular classroom is that I don't think the teacher knew I was there either. But that's a very rare example. Like I said, almost all the classrooms and almost all the students were doing a really good job, but I definitely think there's room for more improvement.
I agree with Abe on some of the emails or things that we heard, and one such thing was last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and I had a constituent explain that they felt that was poor timing to go in during Teacher Appreciation Week, because this person's perception was that you were out there disciplining kids and teachers.
I didn't discipline anybody. I didn't even refer anybody for discipline, no teachers, no kids, no anybody. And in terms of the timing, I mean, I can understand that, but like I said, I mean, this is a critical part of our school year. We're down to, well, last week we were down to 12%, it's less than that now. And I know firsthand that there are a number of students that have a number of missing assignments where if they put them off for even one more week, they are going to be in a hole that they're not going to be able to get out of. Now is a critical time for our students and our staff to really get after it, because it's not going to get easier as this weather gets warmer like we saw today, and as there's more and more field trips and other opportunities. So a heightened awareness last week was critically important for the final success of our school year.
I think it's likely that when you use the word discipline, you're not necessarily meaning a formal avenue, putting a letter in someone's file. I have a second question. I guess one of my, well, first of all, I appreciate that now we're able to have this conversation, so thank you, Abe, for asking the questions that I asked, but clear. The question I have is that I do think that our administrator is busy. I think it is good to have the support of the district, but it also feels like I'm concerned about, like, especially as we look at these last how many weeks of school? That, like, our district administrator having to step in is not exactly, probably not the solution we're looking for. So my question is, I guess, is, especially for these students that have relationships with the building administrators, of which there are a few, and the teachers, you know, how do we get from sending in, having those people manage it in the district administrator, where you basically have less information on hand about each student to know whether they're passing or not, or if they have missing assignments or not?
I agree. I would prefer that our teachers handle this with the study hall kids, with the homeroom kids, and that's what we do. And when that doesn't work, we have our building leadership, our building principals work with those teachers and those kids. However, there are times when I need to do my job and I oversee the principals and the teachers, not directly. And that's what I did last week. And you know, that's my job, is to visit our schools and to observe what's going on and then to make corrections as need be. But I'm not satisfied with where the high school's been, and I'm really optimistic about where it's going.
I have one more question. We know that the visit on Tuesday, you mentioned there was no teacher discipline. I think kind of obviously, like, we would hope that not one visit would result in that, I think. But my question is, I suppose, I'm just really concerned about if the structure of these visits is impacting our teachers and feeling like we have trust in them. Because nobody here is disagreeing that the policy should be followed. We all know it's important. But I think we also know that our teachers have a long list of what is required of them during study hall. And popping in is not a clear picture of what happened, because someone might get lucky and none of their students are on their phone, but sometimes they are, and the opposite has happened. And so that's where I know it feels like, because obviously superintendent visit, there's one person, I know this feels personal, But for me, as a district, is this strategy something that is in line with our goals, or is there something better? Because I hear what you're saying, but still, if we need our administrator to be in the building 3 times a week, that seems like there's a bigger problem to me.
Well, first of all, I agree with you, and that's why when I wrote to the staff, I was very careful how I wrote it. First of all, I complimented everyone and talked about the great observations first, because that was by far and away what the visit reflected. I also recognized in there that our teachers need to have the autonomy to work with kids. They need to have the autonomy to provide some rewards once in a while. And like you said, Dominique, they know these kids, and sometimes there are situations where, you know, they need to work with that kid in a lot of different ways. I fully recognize that. And again, I feel like I was very sensitive to that, with how I messaged the staff. And we don't need the superintendent in the building 3 times a week. Now, it was 3 times last week, but I haven't really made many high school observations this year. I mean, I was there in October quite a bit, a little bit around the midterm, you know, just kind of checking in. And again, my observations were quite good. And then, but after I hear from some staff members, from some of our students, some of our parents, I felt it was really important to get in there again. And with the timing of the school year, like I mentioned. And I'm glad I did. I will say that after I emailed the staff on Tuesday, I thought that what I observed Thursday, and again, this is anecdotal, it's not a you know, perfect measure, but what I observed Thursday I thought was better. And I thought it was better on Friday as well. So whether or not that was my visit and my email, I don't know. But I also did have some communications with teachers. Mr. Drake and I met with a teacher, and I recognize it's not easy. I was a teacher. I recognize it's not easy to have the principal come into your room or the superintendent, and I try to be cognizant of that. But I thought we had a really nice meeting with one of the teachers and kind of explained some of the things, and certainly listened to her feedback. And I don't know, I would like to think that it made a positive difference as we wrap up the school year. But I will say, in terms of trust, you know, if there's concerns out there, I would love to be made aware of those. That would be really helpful for me.
I think in terms of the overall school improvement plan, high school improvement plan, there was a lot of detail in the attachments, and it is clear that in many ways we're building up infrastructure and support to solve a lot of needs at the high school. And I think what we all want is to be sure that we're always using the best strategies possible and making sure that that whenever possible, that the approach is by providing resources and support to teachers when they really need it, because they're the ones who are there every single day. I think that's the overall message I want to convey.
I agree.
I do want to say, I didn't hear from anyone in an email or a phone call, like it sounded like some of you did. I did, however, hear, even as recent as this afternoon, from some staff members, and what I gathered from them was that they really want our staff to follow the protocols of what needs to happen during study hall, because a lot of them are, and I don't know, I have no names, who, what, I don't know any of that, but I'm just saying, a lot of them are, people are definitely concerned about the outlier classrooms that are not following the protocol, and from what I'm being told is that everyone knows who they are, you know, so, and including the kids. where can I take the phone out? They know where they can. And so I do, and I think we all do, want the accountability piece. Personally, I feel like Joe should, I wish he had more time to be out in the schools. Because I'm just like, my brain's going a million places. I'm thinking of, sorry if I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but Josie and Filippo and everything I've learned from him and how in touch with the students and staff and how hands-on he is at work for the district. And I know that Joe doesn't have the same amount of time. We're a much bigger district and he has a lot of roles already. So I don't expect that he is going to have a traveling roadshow constantly. But throughout the year, I've heard of people having, hosting their day in a building on the admin team. We do have staff members that want to see the cell phone policy in place. I understand that maybe that there's differences of how that can happen, because if a staff member doesn't know that a student has a phone, they can't, and they don't put it in the pocket, which apparently kids are not, then that isn't really on the teacher, because how would they know who has a phone and who doesn't have a phone if they have a phone in their pocket? So, and when teachers are busy, I gotta tell you, I'll tell you, there's a lot of times I didn't know somebody was in my room, and it was because I was so busy working with kids that I wasn't looking around to see anyone entering into my classroom. So there's a lot of like, this kid goes so many places, and I guess I just wanted to, what I heard from staff is very consistent. I was glad to see one of the attachments. Let me see what it was. It was one of the attachments where there were some quotes from staff members. Was that on the school improvement?
I think it's right in board docs.
Okay. Well, that was in line. A lot of those comments are in line with what I have heard. That's what I was told. I do not have this via email. So I just think that that's important too. I mean, we need to support our staff that are working also very hard. Not that anyone isn't. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that I'm concerned about Joe not feeling empowered to go through a building and pop into a classroom and, create connections. And I feel that is in his umbrella and part of what I do want him responsible for doing. I guess that's all I'm going to say.
I think, if I can hop in, I think it's great that you are in schools. I think that the information that a person gets from being in a space is really valuable and more important than other things. But I also think it's important that we have this conversation and recognize that intention and perception don't always line up perfectly. And some of the things that are meant in the way that we're all working towards the same goal and we're on the same side, it's not two different goals, this academic rigor and improvement at the high school and making sure we're respecting teachers and giving them the autonomy they need. Those aren't two separate things that work against each other. And so being able to have this discussion and figure out how are we getting there and does it line up, I think that's really important. And I'm glad that Dominique put it on there and that we kind of pushed through a few of the tenser moments. But I think that if we can just keep these lines of communication going, then that's our job, is if we're getting questions from the community, we ask for clarification. We say, can you tell us more about how this went? Did it go the way we're hoping? Is there another way we could try it next time? But I think we're all on the same team and working towards the same thing, so I'm glad for it.
And change will be incremental, and I think I've acknowledged that as well. it was a pretty heavy lift, and Mr. Drake and his team, I think, have been really careful, the only word that's coming to my mind right now, even though it's not the one I want to use. I think they've been really careful in how they've worked with students and staff in this realm in trying to advance these expectations while also really focusing on the autonomy and on the incremental approach. However, I do, and maybe this is a question that the board will have to talk about, maybe not tonight, but at some point, accountability is going to be the question. And I think, we're going to want to know from an administrative team standpoint, I'm going to want to know from the district administrator standpoint, is the board going to support us in holding people accountable? Because if you see this, I mean, I don't think a principal could do any more than Mr. Drake has done in terms of trying to be nice about what the expectations are. In fact, I would almost say, Mr. Drake, this is too nice. I mean, how many reminders do people need? At some point, accountability is going to have to be the next step, and I'm not suggesting we do that on May 20th or something like that. I mean, I think when we roll out our expectations for next fall, typically, you start out a school year and you have, kind of a heightened sense of expectations, but if we're expected to carry through, I think there's probably going to have to be an accountability piece, and we're going to have to feel like the board's going to be supportive of that.
When we start talking accountability, that was one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, because I wanted to get into, is that what this visit provided? Like, is popping in willy-nilly actually accountability? And maybe it is, I'm not saying it's not. Like, is that where we want to go? And like, what are the ramifications of that? I don't need answers to any of that at this time.
I'd like to comment on it though. First of all, like I said, this was not willy-nilly. I mean, it was based on feedback I had been getting. It was a very intentional visit. But in terms of holding people
Point of
accountable,
information, I want to clarify, when I said willy-nilly, I didn't mean your plan to go in, I meant walking into classrooms without a plan.
okay. But the point is, no, my visit was not about making a list or holding people accountable in terms of that. It was observing and then recognizing that we have more work to do.
To put a positive spin on this, during Teacher Appreciation Week, I saw a lot of head nodding about the concern during that week. It was good for the teachers that were following the rules to get a congratulatory thank you from the superintendent for following the rules and protocol. And teacher appreciation was shown.
I just wanted, oops, sorry, one last question. You mentioned, Joe, and I'm paraphrasing here, I can't remember, a couple of comments ago, something like, with respect to sort of building toward accountability and trust, that if there's something that is of a concern or something that where it's not happening, that you want to be informed about it, is that more or less what you said?
I think so.
Okay, what is the way in which you would want to hear about it? Like, what is the way in which you would prefer that board members, bring up those questions with you?
Well, I think I would just go back to the board policy. If you get a concern, just give me a call or forward me the email. I realize some things, there's some privacy issues or things that need to be considered, but and I do appreciate Dominique gave me a call. I appreciated that. But I didn't get any specifics. To know what the specific concerns are would be helpful.
In that phone call, you asked me what they were, and I told you that I didn't know because people had reached out to me asking, which is about what happened in that visit, which is why I called you and asked. So I did not withhold information from you, and I just want to make that clear.
there any final questions or discussion on this topic?
I don't know, I feel like I need to say this, but my friend Tara, who you guys all fell in love with tonight, she and I often joked about teachers thinking that we are self-employed. That's a kind of our long joke. And we do sometimes, you know, we love our classrooms, we close our doors, and these are my kids, you know, like they are ours, and we love them. And sometimes we forget we're not self-employed and that we do have bosses, and I hated that about Brian being my boss. But just so you are aware, I think that it's just important to note that we do have bosses when we're educators, and they can hold us accountable, and they can pop in when they want to. And I think this is a really positive conversation to be having. I'm glad we're having it. And I that's all I want to say.
Thank you. So we'll move on to items related to next meeting dates, board committees, and reports. We have the strategic planning steering committee that meets on this Thursday, the 14th. I'm sorry, Wednesday. The retirement mixer is next Wednesday, the 21st at the Menomonie Middle School at 4 p.m. Graduation is the 25th. Folks who are board delegates or board representatives at the graduation know who they are. Is that correct? Everyone good on that? No school Memorial Day, the 26th. We will not have a second meeting in May, is that correct? Due to Memorial Day, so our next meeting will be June 9th, our regular school board meeting of June. Any questions related to next meeting dates, board committees, or reports? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.